travel, that's right. Health and wellness for life. Got those artists you like. Yeah. We are the voices of the people. Take Christ wherever we go. The light is on our people tonight. Whatever you like, we put it down. The mic is hot, no doubt. The light is.
Hello and welcome to the Lyfe Live. Thank you all for joining us again and again and again. We love it and we appreciate it. We have a wonderful, wonderful layout for you today, I should say. And of course, we have fabulous guests. And of course, we have our positive media moment with Buff Patterson, which we adore and we love. But first and foremost, we appreciate you all for joining us once again. And please continue to come back because we have awesome, awesome guests ahead. So let me go ahead and introduce my hostess with the mostest. I think I should change that. I don't know, but we'll work with that for now. But Mr. Gerald C. Anderson. Hi,
Hey, what's up? Yeah, you know that hostess with the mostest stuff is like 1960s, right?
I know, but I don't know how to come out of that age category. So I need a new one. Yeah, I don't know.
You talk to your grandkids to come up with something new.
Yeah, exactly, because that's like so old school.
Yeah.
But yes, this is a great show once again. And we have a wonderful lineup. I think I said layout.
Yeah, you did say layout.
Okay, I gotta change my words. Lineup.
Thanks for having me on, though.
Yes, you're
Oh,
wonderful.
but wait, I'm not the guest. I'm the host.
Yeah.
I'm the co-host.
I'm great to have you on anyway. But we have Buff, positive media moment, which she always brings us awesome highlights, about just history in itself. So I think that's always awesome.
And today is actually good because it's within the theme. It's Black History Month. He's giving us education, and we're going to have Frederick Douglass to talk to.
Yes, the original. He has come back for us.
Just to be interviewed by the Lyfe.
That's it. He did it all for us.
Yeah.
And God said they can return, so I guess he's returning.
That's right.
So we have a great lineup, and we're excited about this because I think Frederick Douglass is someone that we all heard about, but we didn't know like a lot of the backstory with him. And I think this will be a great way of just enlightening and educating ourselves a little bit more on just backstory, because we all have one. So great backstory. I love this.
So
anything else?
Yeah, we got to bring that young lady on.
Oh, her. Let's go.
You need to strike while it's hot, because her.
I know, right? And I heard she has a new phone, so we need to get her now.
Yeah, we don't want to give her no more time to mess something up. So.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and welcome our positive media moment, Miss. Oh my gosh! Did I just
Buffy?
What?
Yes. Y'all gotta catch me. You guys gotta catch me because my phone acting crazy already. No, look, technical. This is a new phone. It is a Galaxy.
Oh, no
wonder.
And I got to turn the other phone in for $8,000. So we're trying to figure out what I'm going to do. But I want to thank you guys so much. This is amazing Life's Positive Media Moment. And today, in theme with our Black history, I want my person today is talking about our past, our future, and our present. And the person I'm going to talk about today, his name is Matthias de Souza. And in 1641, he was brought here as an indentured servant, and he became the first person to be in our legislature in America. 1641. black man lived in an all white neighborhood. They voted him as in a legislator. And then by 17, let's see, what number is this? By 1876, we had over 1,000 black people in our legislature. So I want to encourage you to say that although we don't see our progress, we were here in the beginning, 1641, 1876. And right now in America, we have over 641 black mayors in America right now. So we can make a change right now in our history. So if you don't know your history, you don't know your truth. And I like to bring these things up because sometimes we feel lost, like we feel like we're lost in a vortex and we don't have a voice. However, we do have a voice, but we have to stick together. And we have to know exactly where we come from, because there are a lot of people that died and sacrificed for us to be in these present spaces, what we have now. And the Life Positive Media moment for me is about bringing to earth who we are in this great country we have.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Good job, Buffy.
I just
I
felt like
love
I was
it.
on a roller coaster with all the movement.
I know. I was getting dizzy.
I gotta be like this.
Officials from America by 1876.
And you-
I gotta be like this. I gotta be like this. You know what's so amazing too? I want to say one quick thing. I've been studying a lot of in
Quick.
history, and it's made me be this crazy history moment. But I want to tell you something. There was a German pastor that came to America after World War One, and he said the black church is what saved America.
I
The
believe it.
black church is what saved America. He said because the white church became stoic and they became these educators and it was, and if you, I don't know if you've ever been to a white church, I don't want to offend anybody, but it's a little more quiet. But black people have kept the spirit of God alive. And I want to say, profess my love for Jesus Christ and my love
And
for how we keep the spirit going. And I believe that the spirit of God has been inside of us. And I do think we have been the backbone of America. So through our church, through our faith. And that's Buff's positive media moment.
All right.
yes.
Well, thank you, Buff.
Thank you, Buffy.
I'll
Thank
take that
you.
phone in and get an apple.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, we know nothing about that. We don't know nothing about that.
Time to upgrade.
Upgrade.
Yeah, you got to upgrade, not downgrade.
Exactly right.
Androids are the best.
All right. Okay.
All right. Thank you, darling. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
All
So
right.
so she mentioned, a couple of things that, that does resonate. And it's like, my grandmother used to always say, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Right.
So like standing on our history and knowing where we came from so we know where we're going
Right.
it's very important for us to kind of keep that in the forefront of our minds.
I
So
agree.
yeah, absolutely.
And we do be jamming in our black churches too.
We do, and we keep stay all day. I mean, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner like in one building,
Yeah.
and we have a good time with it.
All right. So I guess we'll get ready to talk to Mr. Frederick Douglass himself.
Yes, yes, Mr. Frederick Douglass has returned for us the pleasure and the joy. So
Well,
yeah.
of course, it's gonna be on this other side of this commercial. Though. We've got
All right, so let's go for the commercial and then get to Mr. Douglass.
All right.
All right, now we'll be back. Again to our recording of the Life Live. It's a long story. We'll tell you about it later. Let's just not get into it now. But we have Mr. Frederick Douglass with us this evening. And it is Black History Month, so why wouldn't we? Right? Don't you agree? All right, so let's welcome him. Hello, hello.
Good evening. Good evening. It is a pleasure to be your guest. I've been gone for over 100 years. As a matter of fact, tomorrow for you all is Valentine's Day. For me, 200 and maybe 12 years ago, I was born. That was February the 14th, 1818,
Ooh,
in a little place called Hillsboro, which is not Hillsboro in Tampa, but Eastern Maryland, in the Eastern Maryland portion of these United States, and just above the Mason-Dixon line. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much. And I am known, just so we all know, as the 21st century Frederick Douglass.
yes, we love it. We like the 21st century Douglas. Well, we like
Yes.
the old Douglas too.
Well, I'm keeping him alive.
Yes, yes. And we love you
Reinstated.
for it. We love you
Yes.
for it.
Certainly an
So,
honor and a privilege to have you with us tonight. That's for sure.
so
Yes.
give us for those ones that don't have much of an idea of who Frederick Douglass is. Why is he so historical? Why is he so present still in the 21st centuries? Fill us in a little bit on the details that make him so unique and wonderful.
Well, as I mentioned from the upstart, he was born a slave. He was born a slave on a huge plantation with over 500 slaves, and that plantation's owner was named Master Lloyd. Um, it is said that Frederick's dad, father, if you will, is Aaron Anthony. They called him Captain Anthony, and of course, he was a white man. Unfortunately, he got his hands on my mother, Harriet Bailey, and I was conceived. Um, I spent I want to say the first 12 years under the rule, if you will, of my father, Aaron Anthony, in Eastern Maryland. And he had a daughter. His daughter name was Lucretia Ard. Lucretia Anthony before she got married. She got married to Thomas Ard. Now, Lucretia had no idea that I was her little brother. Okay.
Oh,
And as the story goes, she was very kind to me. She gave me extra privileges. She made sure that I got extra apple pie, if you will. She kind of kept me out of trouble, if you will, but she didn't know why she was doing this. She didn't know about the connection. And the connection, quite naturally, is the genes, Gene, the genes that connected her. I had no idea that she was, at the time, that she was my sister, and she had no idea that I was her brother. So as time goes on, Master Anthony, he passes away. Lucretia comes up and she talks with her husband about sending me to live with her brother. Her brother, who is Hugh Ard, he's married to Miss Sophia, and they have a kid by the name of Tommy. Tommy is named after Master Ard, Thomas Ard. So they send me to Baltimore to live with Hugh Ard and Miss Sophia. So during that time that I'm there, Miss Sophia had no idea about being a slave owner, and she had issues reading. Believe it or not, she would be in the living room or in the parlor reading, and she would invite me out to read with her. So in
oh,
essence, we both were reading. We both was getting a lesson. One day, Master Heward walked in and he saw what was going on, and he told Miss Sophia, "Not don't ever teach me to read again." And he chastised me. But the thing of it is, when he chastised me, he didn't know that he had opened up Pandora's box, meaning that though he told me, and he didn't allow me, he threatened me that I should not be reading. In response, I told him, "Master, I'm never going to read again. I hate reading. Reading is bad." Well, just to let you know, that came out of my brain, not out of my heart.
ah,
So I'm telling him what he want to hear. So eventually, every chance I got my hands on a book, I got my hands on the book. Moving forward, when I got about 15, 16 years old, by this time, they had transferred me back to Western Maryland because Master Anthony had passed away, as I mentioned earlier, but they shipped me back under Thomas Ard's rules. Now, Thomas Ard, he was very strict. So eventually he would wind up sending me to Corbeil. Now, Corbeil was known as the slave breaker. Okay. He was also known as the snake. And I say the snake because he knew exactly how slavery should be ran. Even though he didn't own any slaves, he knew how because he was hands on. So one day we were out fanning the mill. I got sick because I had pain in my side. He comes, he kicks me in my side. I run back to Master Thomas Ard. Master Ard tells me I need to go back. So I go back, and believe it or not, Master Corbeil, while I'm in the barn, he pulls out a whip and he commenced to attempting to whip me with this whip. I grabbed the whip. We got into a 2-hour fight. And once it was all said and done, I got to let you know now, the fight that I had with him, not the fight that he had with me, the fight that I had with him was not to hurt him, not to injure him, but to more or less just to let him know, that I'm not that slave that you need to be trying. Okay, so when it was all said and done, I wound up winning. For the last 6 months of my time on his plantation, he never touched me. So I was moved to another plantation, and with the knowledge I had gained, I started writing passes for other slaves. All right. I got caught. I wound up going to jail. And most people nowadays, when you say jail, it's like, oh, no. Well, when they took me to jail, I was like, oh, yeah, because I know when I got to jail, I would wind up, 3 meals, cart, shower, etc., etc. So Master Thomas Ard, he came and he retrieved me, and he wound up sending me back to Baltimore. When I got back to Baltimore, I wound up getting a job. Now, once I got my little job, I was allowed to go and work, but I also started circulating in Baltimore, and I started meeting free black people, especially in my age range. And at this time, 18, 19 years old. And I also had the opportunity to meet who would wound up being my future wife, Anna Mary. So once we met, Anna and I, we got together. She helped me to escape on that September the 18th, 1838 day in which I made it to New York. When I got to New York, they changed my name from Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey to Frederick Johnson. Now, I got to let you know, Anna came to New York, and Mr. Ruggles, who was one of the top and few black lawyers in New York at that time, he shipped me up to New Bedford. So when we got to New Bedford, there was a gentleman, Mr. Lassiter, came with some papers, and the name of the papers was The Liberator, which was owned by William Garrison. All right, William Lloyd Garrison. So I went to a couple of meetings. I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Garrison, and believe it or not, Mr. Garrison put me on a speaking circuit. And he said to me directly, he said, Frederick, you sure speak good. I would love for you to go out and speak on our circuit. I told him, I said, sir, I don't have any formal education. He said, well, you speak like you have formal education. And I told him, I said, sir, I do have a PhD. He said, what? I said, yes, I have a PhD. My PhD is on my back. I got it from the School of Slavery. So I turned around and I showed him my back when he saw all the beatings that I had taken. However, I joined the speaking circuit, the anti-Briscoe speaking circuit, if you will, and we traveled throughout the southern tip of America. Now, when I moved to Rochester, I was really disturbed, and I found myself, believe it or not, with boldness, boldness, boldness. But let me back up a little bit, because when I got to New Bedford, I was introduced to the Johnson family.
Can we interrupt you for a
So
second?
let's
Yeah,
back
yeah.
up a little bit because the story is wonderful and we love the story. But just to give a little more clarity and understanding of this process of the story, so you taught yourself how to read and write.
More or less, yes.
Okay, okay. So
Yeah.
how was it that you were able to teach yourself how to read and write with so much oppression in that
Uh,
time?
that's a great question. Um, with Miss Sophia, all right, her and I learning, and not only that, are you ready for this? They used to
No.
send me to the store, okay? They used to send me to the store, and when I would go to the store, I would break up bread and take it with me. There were white boys there, and I knew that they were hungry. I was hungry. They were hungry for food. I was hungry for education. So I would give them that bread. They would give me reading lessons, if you will.
Ah.
So when I would go to the store, my master would pay me a penny each time I went to the store. Those pennies added up to enough for me to get my first book, which was called The Columbian Orator. Inside that Columbian Orator, they were speeches by George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, etc., etc. And believe it or not, with the little skills of reading that I had at that time, I read and I rehearsed. I read and I rehearsed until I got those words down pat. And once I got those words inside of me, quite naturally, my language tier began to change. So once it
Ah.
began to change, who needed to go to school when I had school right here in my hand? I just needed to use it, and not only that, it's just what else? What else helped me? It's just my motivation to want to learn how
Mhm.
to read.
Right.
Yeah, and that was one of the other questions I was going to mention is what made you so motivated to learn how to read and write?
Well, believe it or not, my mother, for what I heard, my mother, Miss Harriet Bailey, who I really never saw her. However, she did make her way when I was a baby in the pit of the dark. She rocked me and she called me her little Valentine. I
Mm.
learned also that she was educated. She knew how to read. Okay. Even though she was a slave, she knew how to read. And just the mere fact of that, that was sort of like some motivation to me to want to be different and just to want to be because look, at one point I just said I gave up and I just figured I'm gonna be
Mm.
a slave for the rest of my life. Once I got the corvée, that was it.
Mm.
But because once they moved me to master freeland, everything seemed to come back to me. My motivation, because he was one of those type slaves. Look, you just go out there and you do what I ask you to do. At the end of the day, you're free to do whatever you want to do. So I use that time not only to continue to educate myself, but I use that time to educate others. So, in the evenings, we would have reading classes, and there would be slaves in my class, believe it or not, from the age of 10 all the way up to maybe 110. So I was
Wow.
very eager to want to assure that my people that were there with me would learn how to read so that no chains could bond them or bind them because of the
Mhm.
fact that if they didn't have anything else, they had knowledge.
Right. Yeah. So I know that you traveled a lot um, probably in your adult life. The first time you went overseas and you saw how the people lived over there, what are some of the differences that you noticed about life in the United States that embraced slavery versus countries that did not embrace slavery?
Well, when I got to New England, if you will, I was at a restaurant and I was just sitting there outside, and believe it or not, um, a little dog came up, and the dog kind of put his paws up on my lap, and he looked at me, and he went, "Ow, ow," and that told me right there, it wasn't about the color of my skin. It was just that I was a man and he was appreciated. And I looked at him and he was wagging his tail. So that told me I was accepted. And not only that, in different parts of that country, the time that I was there, when I got there during the Capri in 1847, I think, no, 1845, believe it or not, the people were welcoming. They invited me in. And trust me, wherever I went, one thing I noticed that was different there as opposed to what was different here, everywhere I went, they opened up the door for me. Everywhere I went, I didn't have to worry about we don't serve you ends here. Everywhere I went, I had people that were eager to come up and shake my hand. I spoke at many on many occasions there to sometimes the rooms that I spoke at, the church that I spoke at, the meeting halls that I spoke at were full to capacity. So I was definitely welcome there in Canada, New England, and all my stops that I went to, I was welcome. However, and not only that, when I got back to America, I got chastised by a lot of my own people because some of them called me a traitor. Some of them said I shouldn't be talking against the country. Some of them said that what I'm doing will wind up getting me hung. But it had to be done, and the word had to go out about how Black folks in this country, especially in the South, were being treated and how they were being, just suffocated, if you will, by the beatings and what have you. So to me, it didn't matter. But I will say, yes, when I got overseas, I was treated just like a man and not as a color.
Ah, ah.
Okay.
So, what made you so powerful as far as like advocacy? What were some of the things that you fought for?
Well, some of the things that I fought for, first of all, being under the leadership of William Lloyd Garrison, he opened up the door for my voice, if you will. And in opening in my voice and opening up that door for my voice, then came what is called I started writing newspapers. The Frederick Douglass Weekly was just one of them. The North Star was another one. And not only that, when I felt things were not right, I felt that I should stand up and I should speak on what needed to be spoken on. So I mentioned earlier that I had moved my family from New Bedford to Rochester, New York. And while living in Rochester, New York, I was in total disagreement. The Civil War was about to start. And I knew at that point that I needed to get to that White House and I needed to have a meeting with the president, who I assisted in getting elected. When I got to that White House, as a matter of fact, I'm in the Oval Office, and Mr. Lincoln, the first thing he said, well, besides welcome me in, he said, Mr. Douglass, I heard you were talking some stuff about me. And yes, I told Mr. Lincoln, look at him dead in his eyes. I said, yes, I have been talking about you because you have been slew-footed in helping my people progress. And then I brought up the subject matter in reference to the Civil War. I asked him, I said, how are you going to win this war with one hand behind your back? And he said, what do you mean? I said, look, you got thousands of Black men that are willing to go to war to help win this Civil War, but you will not authorize them to come in. Now, he said, if you do authorize them, the only thing we ask for in return, sir, is that they are allowed to be free. And not only that, I also fought on the front line for women's rights. Now, we talked about women's suffrage. We talked about slaves being freed. Now, during that meeting, Mr. Lincoln, believe it or not, he paused and he looked and he thought, and I could just look at his mind just churning, whereas from 1860 to 1860 to 1963, this man had the audacity to see Martin Luther King Jr. standing on the Lincoln Memorial giving that speech, I have a dream. Now you can only imagine, follow me. I know y'all lost there, but follow me. Now, if Mr. Lincoln's thought would have came free, that means that only 60 some years ago, Black folks in this country would have been freed. So that was one of the main concerns that I had, and that brought me to the White House to have that sit down with Mr. Lincoln. And believe it or not, We were all in Rochester at the church. 6 months later, on January the 1st, when that soldier rode up on that horse and came into the church, he unraveled that oath that stated that as of January 1, 1863, we are free. Now, that was just 3 of the agendas that I fought for to help us as a people, of Black people, women, to become free. Now, even though we were free, there were still situations that and issues that needed to be worked on. For instance, when President Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, became president, I helped him. I coerced the people to vote him in. And believe it or not, Mr. Grant will always go down in history with us because of the fact that he signed in law what was called the anti-Klan law. The anti-Klan law, yes, which was to shut down the Ku Klux Klan. And because of that law, 5,000 Ku Klux Klanmen were put to death. And when I say put to death, I'm not talking about, in jail or what have you, but it was a destruction of the KKK. All right. Also, President Lincoln, he had me return to the White House in 1864. Now, the discussion was that he felt something was about to happen. And he wanted me to take charge. He wanted me to gather up people because at this time, as we all know, slaves were free. No, they were not free. He knew upon his reelection that was about to come that he wanted to move forward and and make sure that all Black people in this country was free. Well, his notion was to have me to go ahead on and round up as many people as I can and take it to Texas to free those other slaves. Well, unfortunately, that did not come to pass. It did not come to pass because on April the 14th, 1865, President Lincoln was at the Ford Theater. When he was at the Ford Theater watching the show that was going on, John Wells Booth snuck up in the private lounge, if you will, and assassinated President Lincoln. Now, I understand that the country today in 2025 has been sieged by the administration that is in the White House today in 2025. Listen to this. When President Abraham Lincoln, which I was very distraught when he was assassinated, his vice president, Andrew Johnson, took over as president of these United States. I have you know that it was found out that President Johnson took that position to be a dictator. He took that position to want to have Blacks put back into slavery. He took that position, all right, and because he wanted to be that ruler. Now, myself and as well as my son, Lewis Douglass, and some other leaders, we met at the White House. We met for exactly 1 hour, they say it happened. Within that hour, tempers began to fly. Upon the end of that meeting, I was the last one out that door. Just before I got my whole self out of that Oval Office, I could hear Johnson talking to one of his secretaries, calling me an N, and not only calling me an N, saying that they should get rid of that whole blank race of N's. So just think about where you are today as opposed to this Johnson who took over after Abraham Lincoln. And not only that, because of because of this law that Johnson wanted to put in play, he wanted to fire his vice president. Think about that now. All right, way back in 1865, think about 2025, where the president wanted to fire his vice president because the vice president wanted to continue to try to tell Johnson what to do and what laws to put down. So, saying that, Congress sort of kind of got fed up with what Johnson was doing. And I have you know, Johnson wound up going to trial and they wound up impeaching him. Now, my son, Lewis, who was at the trial, he sent me a notice and he wanted me to come to trial. I refused to come, and I told my son that I'm not coming solely because of the fact that I didn't want the notice to be on me when the notice should be on that man right there and getting him out of the White House. Another mission that I took on was becoming the first sheriff of Washington, D.C., which I was really proud.
Before you get into that, I want to ask because you brought up 2025 and 1865. So if you were actually living in 2025, how would you handle this whole shakeup of the government that we have before us today?
That's a great question. Quite naturally, if I was living here in this 2025 time zone, I would, as much as possible, seek a visit to the White House. I would have that sit down with your president of these United States and to alert him to the fact that what he is doing is totally against the law, especially when it comes to some of the laws that he's putting down and how it affects and how he should look at deeply how it affects the minorities in this country. And saying that, I would hope that we will come together in some type of agreement that some of the laws that he has already signed, thinking about signing, that he will reverse his path and rethink what he is doing, not just to the minorities, but doing to the whole country, and how he's putting the country in a situation where, and I'll use the 2025 terms, where it could wound up being a setup for him.
So you go ahead, Daryl. Go ahead.
So in the time you were 200 years ago, you were born.
Yes.
You saw a lot of differences over that 200 years, but there are a lot of similarities as well. How do you feel about the advancement of people over that time?
Well, since the only thing that I'm distraught about is the fact that once we were free, quite naturally, Reconstruction came into play. The Reconstruction era came into play, and that meant that we were able to serve in Congress. That means that we were able to write laws and see laws put on the books. I was proud of that moment. However, coming through and all the advancements that we have made in reference to inventions, we have made advancements into education. We have made advancements into science. We have made advancement in just about every arena there is. However, from the time since I left Earth in 1895 at the age of 77, I was on the tip, believe it or not, of seeing, as it stated, no one never heard my voice. No one has never seen me on camera, moving, talking, etc. So I was just on the tip of seeing that invention come about where recordings were being made. That means that, they record you as you're speaking, so they get your voice, because I had a very deep baritone voice.
Distinctive.
Yeah, and very distinctive voice. I've had the opportunity to mingle and bury, and I'll use your word again, Miss Hollywood, to mingle in distinctive crowds, if you will, distinctive networking. So with that, I've had the opportunity to see a lot of coming of age, if you will. Okay. As a matter of fact, when you're talking about photographing, I am the number two on the list of being the most photographed. There's one person that have me beat, and you would never guess who that person is. Well, don't study too long because I'm gonna tell you. Mark Twain. Mark Twain
Oh,
is number
wow.
one, and I am number two. But the advancements that I've seen through, had the opportunity to read about, because quite naturally I wasn't here, but the advancements that I've seen has really been remarkable. However, in the advancements, there's been a lot of us, a lot of our people who have been left on the sideline, a lot of people who have missed out on great opportunities, and which has caused a lot of dysfunction, discombobulation within our communities. So, unlike then, it was a matter of we bonded together to make sure that everybody got a piece of the pie. And I would say no, everybody didn't get the piece of the pie. I would say maybe 80% of us back then got a piece of the pie, as
Mhm.
opposed to, unfortunately, for what I'm seeing now, maybe only 60% are getting a piece of the pie nowadays. And, because I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you, there's a lot of greed going on nowadays. You have the upper echelon, as opposed to, you have the 1% as opposed to the 99% that are suffering.
Right.
So you have to think about that. And we as a people, we have come a long ways from which I lived in when I was coming through prior to becoming an adult, that lived in shacks, that lived in one room, or sometimes didn't even have shelter. You
Mhm.
talk about coming from an era where we didn't have names. Coming from an era where we didn't even have proper hygiene. And I see how people are living today. As a matter of fact, when I was woke up out of my sleep, I was looking to get into a carriage. They wind up coming and picking me up in a stretch limo. I think it was a Mercedes. you know, so that goes.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah. And unfortunately,
But
though, we are overtime. So we're past the 30-minute mark already.
Yeah. And
well,
one of the, oh, but I want you to quickly touch on, because I don't remember if you touched on this part, but because you witnessed so many things and, in your lifetime, you also are a very spiritual man.
okay,
So,
yes, yes.
yeah, so with your spirituality, how did that influence your activism and trying to just understand justice? How did you kind of get to that clarity?
Well, I will say this, that um, when I was with Master Art, I used to run away. And when I say run away, I more or less used to go out into the woods. While I was out in the woods, what little bit of knowledge I had at that time, I ran into a gentleman and his family, Mr. Lawson. Now, Mr. Lawson, he used to read the Bible a lot. So when I met him, he would have me to read the Bible. And the more I read that Bible, the more the spiritual being began to take over within me. Now, when I became an adult, quite naturally, when I was in Boston or in New Bedford, I went to a white church. And I was in that church for maybe about 2 months. But then I got kind of fed up because of the fact that, quite naturally, number one, we had to sit in the back. Number two, when they would do the communion, all right, when they would do the communion, the white parishioners, quite naturally, they got served first. And when it was our time to get served, we got what was left over. So that
Ah,
meant that, when it came to communion, God, la la la, all right,
mm-hmm,
there was none,
mm-hmm.
there was none for us. So that prompted me to move on from that church, and not only that, to begin another church, which became one of the first AME Episcopal churches, where yes, I was ordained as a minister. Now, I became a minister, and I was a minister for maybe about 3, 4, 5 years, if you will. However, once I left the church to become that evolutionist, that activist, that role of me being that pastor, if you will, that role of me reading the Bible as I did, as such, that role of me being in the company of other pastors who were prophets, if you will, that inspired me throughout my life, because just about every speech I gave, you must believe that within my speeches, there was the mention of Noah. There was the mention of the lion's den. There was the mention of the 40 days and the 40 nights of rain. And when I speak of the 40 days and 40 nights of rain, that's just like the 40 days that it took us as slaves traveling to become free. So it took us 40 days and 40 nights. Quite naturally, it was longer than that. However, I would use paraphrases from the Bible to get over pertinent messages to those in the audience. And please understand, the majority of the people that I spoke to was not us. They were white people.
Ah, interesting. Just a unique individual, just a unique story. And I love history anyway. And I wish we had like days to continue this conversation, because there's just so much more I want to know and I want to learn. And it's like, no, we don't have time. So I know you. I'm only kidding. Go ahead, say what you was gonna say.
No, I was going to say, because I know we're coming down to the end. I just want to put this in that on February the 20th, 1877, I'm sorry, 1895, at the age of 77, I was at the Washington Convention Center, and I was there with Susan B. Anthony. Susan B. Anthony, her and I, we sat on stage, and she spoke before I did. Now, once it was all said and done, she helped me back to the carriage. I got in the carriage and I made it back home. By this time, I'm married to my second wife, because my first wife, Anna, has already passed away. She passed away 2 years prior. Well, when I get home, my wife, my new wife, Helen, she is Helen Pitts. She's in the kitchen entertaining. She asked me, was I hungry? I said, no, I'm going upstairs, to rest, because I have to go back out again. Well, when I got to the second step, I jerked. When I jerked, I had a stroke. Upon having a stroke, I fell down the stairwell, and that's where I passed away from a heart attack. I bring that up to say this: once everything was done, and my body was, ready for the funeral, if you will, for the homegoing, I became the first Black man to lay in state in the Capitol building. Not only that, I became the first Black man to have kings, queens, other presidents from around the world to come into America to say goodbye to me. Wow. And I just want to say to your listeners, if they ever would like to visit where I lay, they can always come to Mount Holyoke Cemetery in Rochester, New York, where I lay with my first wife, Anna, and my second wife. She is behind us. So it's all three of us at the same site.
Wow. Now that's interesting. I like that.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
All
yeah.
Right.
So, and it's just a joy. God has really blessed me over the last 15 years to travel and bring Frederick Douglass to life. As a matter of fact, once we're done, I got to load up, because I'm in Largo tomorrow morning at 8:00. So it's a beautiful thing. And thank y'all for having me.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. It was a pleasure. So much history. I love it. I love it. I love it. We started this country, so I'm not even gonna get into it.
Oh yeah. Well, one thing, and if I could come out of character and I can say this, I'm 68 years old, and I was here like I tell people, I came to Earth, if you will, when Truman was president, and I've been blessed to see all these presidents come along. And and there's been some good presidents. There's been some not so good presidents that's come along in my time. But one thing I can definitely say, God has not failed me yet.
And
Amen.
he won't.
There it is.
He's not a failure.
There it is.
We are,
Huh?
but he's not a failure.
That's it. That's it. Because I will tell you this, they not like us, okay? The revolution will not be televised. Serena, where you at, Serena? Come on out here and do that crip walk one time.
That quick walk. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Well, it was a pleasure, absolute pleasure. You must come back again. And not just for Black History Month. You need to keep us posted on what you're doing and how, your tour, because you're going on tour.
Yeah.
So definitely keep us posted.
Okay,
Love
and I
it.
will share that August the 16th, 2024 marked 50 years of living in Tampa. Next month, I will begin writing my 15th book, which will be entitled just simple 50, to represent 50 years that I've lived here in Tampa, Florida.
Oh, wow.
So, so it will start from 1974 when I left New York and when I came to Tampa, and it will go from there all the way up to the present. So I'm hoping to have that done by December of 2025.
All right.
All right. Well, we'll have you on for that.
Yes, and it's a pleasure talking and seeing you, Mr. Anderson.
All right, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, my new brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Wrap this up right quick, and then we can chat some more.
Okay. Will do.
All right.